check, test, check. All we're doing is waiting for Breezy to finish putting his kid down, just like I just finished, and then we're off to the races. Check.
Hold on, not yet.
Well, it's too late.
This one. I'm on the wrong.
He's doing his thing. We trying to get it to work.
Don't sleep.
Rest. All right, let's see. Technology, does it function?
don't know
Everybody
how
say
to
a
do it.
thing.
Check. Hello.
What's up? Howdy.
That's what I'd like to see. And then, of course, the chat box is functioning, but it's got the biggest text in the entire.
Unbanned stummy homers.
It's kind of hilarious, actually.
Someone
the combo.
actually responded to my tweet saying that they should, like, and added Brian Gottlieb, and we're like, right? I was like, no, do not unban stummy homers.
I saw that while I was putting
how
my son
broken
down.
that would be? Like, oh my god. If I was
thought that was a
stubby
great
hammers.
idea. What do you mean? You
Oh
have
my, he would OTK people like turn to.
Stubby Hammer, Stubby Katsu, right? Isn't that the play?
I'm excited to play that deck. I don't know how good it'll be into other busted stuff, but it'll be fun.
While we wait, are you going to Worlds?
I wish. I do
No.
not have the funds.
Alas.
Same.
Alas.
But she is
Yeah.
telling me she's more into going to events than me. She's like, we will go to at least 3 events, and one of them will be international. I'm like, okay, figure it out.
Dang.
3 events, man.
You heard the lady.
I know. No, I'm telling you, she's more into it than I am. She loves doing that stuff.
Make it happen. Okay. Well, I think we should probably start with the banned and suspended announcement, shouldn't we? We should probably start there.
Yeah.
Seems like a pretty good spot to start. I'm going to screw up the cameras while I do this, unfortunately, but I will put this on screen and see if this functions. Does this?
Okay.
Yeah. For some reason, it blanks the entirety of the thing. I don't get why that does that, but for some reason, it's decided that we can't have nice things. So either we are on screen or the Living Legend update is on screen. So look at that. Isn't that fun? You'll love to see it because this is how technology functions.
I just see you guys.
I mean, it is what
it
it
flickered
is.
for a second. Now it's good.
Yeah. You would think that you could just like bounce back and forth, but I can't have both on because I don't have a great second monitor. But then again, this is what happens when you decide to do this on a whim and don't set it up beforehand.
Then Max is gonna find a way to get Dustblade unbanned just for like a week, just for one event, so I can run fatigue prior.
The absolute dream. Just capitalize on it is what would happen. That's the problem. They would own the market.
Oh yeah, that's the real motive. This is why they want it
Oh yeah,
legal.
that one post they had, where they had like 1,000 dust plates just sitting in the freaking box.
That's the play. All right, so first things first. Hello, everyone. It is me, Steven, joined by, in no particular order, Breezy down at the bottom, all the way down there.
Here.
Breezy's down there, and TCG Talk is right below me as well. And we were talking in a group chat, and we were like, hey, we should probably talk about this ban and suspension announcement. And then we were like, hey, no, let's talk about the Living Legend update, because that is some craziness. We got some craziness to talk about, some big changes. And so we figured we'd hop on, because there's a lot of things that we could discuss with regards to this. There's a lot of different ways that we could take it. And so it would probably behoove everyone to talk it through and then break it down, as it were, with a lot of different sort of caveats and ways that you could sort of think about it and look at it. So that's the plan. I am going to play the devil's advocate and also the host, because I'm still trying to decide how I feel about the ban and suspension announcement. I'm not sure I've really settled. So maybe one of you can convince me one way or the other on how you feel about it, and then we can kind of go from there. If we were really cool and we could play around the horn like ESPN style, like give
me
points.
Oh,
Dude, I love Around the Horn. That's a deep. I haven't seen that
That's
show in
been-
forever.
Yeah, that show used to be insane.
maybe if we can get LSS to give us these updates ahead of time, we can plan that out.
That would be pretty cool, actually. That would make for some really cool moments. Nevertheless, let us begin with the Living Legend update, and I'll just do a quick recap of it if you've missed it. I will, when I tab over, for some reason it makes everybody sad, and so there it is. It makes them all go away, so we're all depressed now, and we are hiding our faces in shame. But essentially, the Living Legends system has been updated in point totals and in one other main area. So the first thing is the point totals. So now you have 300 points for winning the World Championship. No changes to Pro Tours, Callings, National Championships of any size. But now Battle Hardens are 40 points instead of 10. Small National Championships, for some reason, are now listed here a second time. So I'm not sure why that is. Oh, it's because it's the less than 96 player cap is changed. I forgot the U.S. National Championship is its own little special thing. And so there is an increase from 10 to 20 there. And then PTIs is the big one, because PTI is, I guess, the big one along with Battle Hardens. Kind of goes from 4 to just a casual 20 points. And then skirmishes go from 2 to 4 as well. So overall, that is now what the table looks like. More points across the board. But I think perhaps the biggest change, arguably the biggest change that they've made, is the change that now there will be weekly Living Legend checks in order to allow for large changes and rotations of heroes due to the Living Legend point totals being achieved midway through a competitive season. So midway through something like a ProQuest season, if a hero reaches Living Legend status, then that following Monday there will be an announcement, and then Friday they will be Living Legended out. So it kind of hits for the weekend, and you have basically 5 days or so to kind of read that and make your adjustments as you see fit. So with all that being said, let's pop us back on the screen, because I don't have enough screen real estate, and so I had to do it that way. Nevertheless, let's discuss the thoughts overall. So first things first, let's go right below me on screen. Dylan, aka TCG Talk. You should check out his YouTube channel. Has some pretty good content. Did pretty well at this thing called the Calling DFW. Has a pretty great game on stream as well. But what are your overall thoughts on these changes, my friend?
Overall, I'm generally positive about it, because I've learned, even obviously in our real life and our normal jobs, like as a marketing person, like you don't know the whole story, like what their future plans are, what their event schedule is going to look like, all that stuff, right? Because all of this is contingent. A lot of this is contingent on what that looks like. But overall, I think, like I said to y'all earlier, I think LSS is kind of betting on themselves with the new format and how they're doing it, because like heroes could living legend at like light speed, right? But if they have a slew of right, they said like 15 heroes potentially coming in next year, like 4 sets, stuff like that. So I think that as long as those heroes are balanced, like in a perfect world, heroes are balanced. You may have a couple strong ones, but like Bright Lights was a good example of how you have a, in my opinion, at least early on, unless someone breaks it, you have a really kind of higher tier hero like Dash.io. You have Max, who in my opinion is kind of in the middle, and you have Teklo, which I'm not gonna say is bad, but someone needs to figure it out. And so if they can continue that through every set, and it's more consistent, then you might be able to hold, and it won't be as like light speed as you would think it is with these new things. But if they mess up somewhere, that's a if they mess up somewhere, then this could like really bite them in the butt, because then you have stuff just LLing in like 1 quarter, right? Like 3 months. And for newer players, that's really hard. That's the one, I guess, the negative. I'll put this as Flesh and Blood. Like no matter which way you spin it, has the highest barrier to entry of any top TCG right now. By far. And so trying to convince new players like, hey, like I always use Katsu. Let's say in one magical mystical world, Katsu's the best deck in the format. Probably will never happen. If I tell someone like, hey, Katsu's only at 460 living legend points right now, I think it's a good chance to pick him up. He might be a good. He's only halfway there. And then literally 2 months from now, he's living legend because he won one pro tour, one calling, and like a season of events. That could be a real feels bad when I just told someone to spend $600 on a Katsu deck. Now some of that is staples, but you know, it all depends. There's positive negatives to it, but overall, I guess the main answer is they're kind of betting on themselves. They really have to execute right, or else this could go the wrong way. But that's just my initial thought.
And hey, I will say this before I toss it over to Parker over there. But if you would like to chime in with your own thoughts, or if you have something that you kind of like hear from one of us and you're like, hey, what about this, blah, 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 type that in the chat and we will kind of read that out as we go. I've got it pulled up on my phone over here along with some other
Same.
stuff so that I can kind of double check and kind of chat along with you. But yeah, most definitely type that in. But Breezy, what do you think about this overall?
Yeah, I mean, I digest things like really quickly, right? Like I read the article and immediately took to Twitter. Was like, this is such a big win. And this is maybe coming from someone, I think it's all perspective, right? Like from the higher level players, the hyper competitive, the names you typically see, in the top 32 and up, world traveling competitive heroes or competitive players are the ones that, and I don't mean this in any harsh way, but they're the ones that are taking to Twitter and actually saying that this is bad. But from my perspective as a casual player, it's interesting that I see this as a good thing because it's oppressive as a new player and maybe even as a casual player to have to drudge through these metas that last, what was Lexi's been just wreaking havoc since April. And I think they were starting to see the same projection potentially start to happen with any of these 15 that they have in the can, and they're like, hey, look, like this hero's got legs. If we don't do something about this, we could have another 7-8 month long meta where this hero just we have it turns into them having to work around those kinds of things. So from that perspective, I see it as a win. Maybe from the hyper competitive stance where people want to be playing the top tier deck, that's hard for you to do now because that's not viable for you to buy a new deck every, I don't know, 2 months. And maybe it is. Maybe it's financial burdens are different for everybody. But I think that's the biggest downside of it in my view is the financial side. And but this is what we were talking about earlier. I think that's the biggest I think voiced negativity of the whole thing is it's very difficult to say, hey, by the way, that deck you were wanting to play, you can't go buy a new one or completely flesh out a whole new deck and come back later. And that could be a hard pill to swallow, especially from people who have been in the game and are just now coming into the game as well. So I don't know. I see it overall as a win. We don't see Dylan even pointed on this, right? Like we don't see the full picture. I come from marketing as well, so this could be LSS is an incredibly intelligent company. So I don't put it past them to say, hey, this is something that could be a working theory for them, but on the surface, all we see is like fire, chaos, panic, what the heck is going on? But on the back end, they can have a very controlled, detailed, laid out system. And so I put my faith in this statement, especially because James White himself was like, "Hey, this article needs to come from me. Like, I need to be the one that says these incredibly, out of nowhere statements." So I trust it.
Yeah, so for me, this was a big kind of a whiplash moment. So I didn't expect a huge living legend change right now, simply because I feel like they've already made some tweaks, and so there was this like I don't know, let it ride mentality that I kind of expected to see an overall kind of like, hey, let's just let these new slight changes to the living legend point system kind of play out over the course of it. But then there was this sort of obviously this announcement, and there was this whiplash feeling for me of like, whoa, okay, so what does this actually affect? And so the first couple of questions I asked myself is, okay, so I just sat down and built Dromai out like fully. I tried to like get as crazy and as like blingy as I could make it because I am one of those people that does not like mainline a hero. I play so many different heroes because I think the game is
Hmm.
like so incredible in that like you can pick up a hero and it feels fundamentally different from any other hero and unique to itself. So I struggle to mainline a hero like other people perhaps more, easily and readily grasp onto them. But I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to do it. I'm going to mainline Dromai. And then this announcement makes me worried a little bit because of the possibility that that might not last for very long. And so I know I can't be the only person that has this question mark of like, okay, well, if that's the case, what does that actually look like for me? And what is the rotation of that hero at a quicker pace mean for me as either a competitive player or a casual player as far as those cards that I've invested into rotating out along with the hero. And then I came back to the statement that we're probably going to talk about here in a little bit of 15 new heroes coming in 2024. And that could answer a question that leaves me a little bit of a pause in the fact that, okay, if we are understanding that LSS in general and the game in general is both powering down, but also trying to bring parity in a lot of respects to a variety of heroes and classes, then it could stand to reason that an influx of new heroes means that what we've just seen with six different callings and all these different like past events being won by six different heroes or a bunch of different heroes,
Hmm.
there may be more points available, but because parity is what it is and heroes are around the same power level, you may not necessarily see that hero ride off as quickly as you might expect, especially with how
Yeah.
dominant we've seen in the past year of a hero being, for example,
Yeah.
the past multiple years, right? We've seen like Starvo come out and just immediately dominate, and that's like the de facto deck. And then Chain takes up the mantle, and then Prism moves on as well. And then Oldham kind of is always like floating around and is sort of a mainstay, and then finally moves on because he scored enough points. And then we have Briar, and then we have, and it just like always feels like there's another hero that's sort of just the boogeyman of the format. We might be
Hmm.
entering into a meta now if everything is starting to kind of reach this powered down throttle where there's no true boogeyman and specialists on heroes are almost rewarded for their ability to play into all their matchups. And that can, of course, lead to the question that we'll ask probably later down the road of does this hurt specialists? Because it could LL them thanks to this sort of like mid-season LL system. But it left me in this spot where I'm like, okay, I have this dissonance between the possibility that this hero that I could be really invested in may not be here for much longer because there's more points available, which is fine. I actually don't really mind that too much. But also, if there's more heroes coming down the pipeline, perhaps those points spread out nicely. And maybe that's the thought process there, which I find quite interesting. But I feel like a lot of people are bringing this point up, and not only in chat, but just in general in, the Twitter sphere or in other social media kind of conclaves. I don't know the right word, but the idea that really the mid-season living legend is the sort of the tipping point for them. So, what do you think about the idea of a weekly check on the living legend status and having that be sort of the tipping point for whether a hero goes somewhere in the middle or just sticks around for longer? What are your thoughts, TCG talk?
They're saying like if like midway through like ProQuest or midway through like something else like that. Um,
Yeah.
I don't have an issue with it, but I'm biased. So like I come from the esports world, right? Like working in the Call of Duty League, Overwatch League, and we had like mid-season nerfs and buffs and format changes like all the time. So like that's just, in my opinion, that's a part of being a competitive player. Uh, like that. This is the one opinion I guess I'll sound a little bit like an a-hole on, is like that's a part of being a competitive player. If you're going to travel to events, if you're going to change things, like yes, if there was a living legend like sort of like how it is right now, like 2 weeks before Worlds, it does feel a little bit bad to get a hold of cards. But I think if you're going to something as big as like Worlds or a calling, you should have two decks. You should have a main deck that you test and then a backup deck. But that's just my opinion. I know that's not perfect. I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this, but like that's just the nature of it. There's no way to avoid that. You have to take like the good and the bad with this stuff. And I'd rather have that than like aggressive bans and stuff, because like I've came from our TCGs that will not be named, where like you have this aggressive ban like a week before a big event and it's like, okay, they just killed the whole deck. Like what that feels worse to me than like kind of foreseeing, like if I'm starting ProQuest season and Lexi's at 902, I'm like, okay, I might can play her week one, but I need to have a Jeremiah deck ready to go. Or I just say, hey, as a competitive player, I'm going to start playing Jeremiah now because it's the second best deck, and I know Lexi's going to Living Legend. I'm not going to waste my time playing her in the first week of ProQuest unless you just love the hero. That's different. I'm just going to switch now. I think that's my take on it, at least.
I think there are two things, and I wrote these down as you were speaking, that stick out to me, though, that is sort of a dangerous side point to those things, though, is the idea of like, yes, competitive players should have that, but and this is being echoed in chat, it looks like a lot of players on the casual side of things are going to be hit by that same moment of like, hey, I'm ready to go to my skirmish, for example. Skirmish now have 4 living legend points, right? So I'm going to go to my skirmish season. This is like the week 3 of skirmish, and I picked up and I put together chain, and I walk in, and I no longer have the capability of playing that deck because someone won with it last week, and now I have to either bow out of the tournament or hope that someone lets me borrow a deck, or I just I didn't notice it. I'm not necessarily someone that plays all the time. That could actually happen, I think, over the next couple of weeks with Chain being close to Living Legend, and that is the question mark. That like, what does this mean for that for this overall experience? The other thing, kind of in that rebuttal, though, is that going to happen as often as people are talking about it right now? Is that going to be more of a corner case, or is that going to be something that is like always on the forefront of people's minds because there's always a hero floating towards the top? But then the other kind of side kind of point to your sort of conversation is that in an esport, it's easy to just say, okay, this is nerfed, let's change it around. Same thing with a digital card game, right? If you were playing a digital card game, if they just nerf it, we just take that card out of the deck virtually. We click the button and it's gone. But when you have to actually go and buy the cards, things are a little bit different. I mean, case in point, look at the market that we have right now, and look at what it takes to buy a twin drive versus.
Yeah, I'm gonna sell my twin drives for $150. It's ridiculous.
Foil twin drives are $911, and your second born child. Otherwise, you have to take out a payment plan and give them your liver. So, like, that's the question mark that you have as well, is like, do the card prices come down in response to this? There's some interesting, like, little things that you can talk about. But, Breezy, what are your thoughts on just this whole affair there?
I don't know, I don't know what you just said, but something just sparked in my head as a marketing, like, just show up to your LGS with every deck built and charge $12 to play it that night.
Oh my gosh, makes so much money.
That sounds no. Let's not do that. No.
No, I'm just kidding. Oh, your deck is LL'd. Don't worry, shop right here at my. No, I'm just kidding.
There you go. We have pre-built competitive decks.
No, I think, and this is something I should have done before our call, but I was actually curious to look back, because I don't know what 2024 has in store, but you could probably project based off of this last year how many battle hardens.
I just counted. You want me to tell you?
Of this year?
Yeah, I just counted while y'all are talking. We had 28 battle hardens and 9 callings. So
what's the math on 28?
Yeah, so per the new thing, it would be 1,120 LL points for battle hardens this year, and obviously 900 points for callings. So 2,000 points allotted per the new system if you did the same event schedule as this year.
Which I project there's probably going to be more if as a company you're
Ideally,
growing
yeah.
and you want to start expanding and more LGSs start up, yeah, etc. So yeah, I think that's to your point, Stephen. I think it's like how often is this, because it's so polarizing, right? It went from only during the BNS announcement would we hear about LL to every week. They didn't even start with like every month. They went straight to every week. So when you hear that, it's almost like, wait, should we expect something every week? So I think that's what's causing that like mental, like, what is happening? But in reality, I don't know that it's going to be as like black and white as like, oh no, we're going to see a hero LL every Monday. Get ready. But I don't think that justifies like, you know, or should I say, it does still justify people's feelings towards this. Just
Right.
because we won't see an LL every Monday, it doesn't mean like, oh, it's fine. Every other Monday's fine. Like, no, it's like it's still very, very polarizing difference. So I think that feelings are justified for this dramatic of a change. And I think that they could have easily, in my opinion, gone from, and I've seen it a little bit in chat, is saying like even once a month would have been better. And I think that would have softened the blow. I think they just went a little too heavy-handed with saying it was once a week. But maybe the once a week is to ensure that midway through a season they could pull a hero out from under the rug. So
Right.
I don't know. It's all justified. Like the way I feel that it's a huge win, I feel is justified because I've seen a lot of people kind of echo that as well. But I also understand being like, dude, this kind of sucks and isn't for me. So I don't know.
I have a super big counterpoint that I've literally heard no one say. And I wrote this down before we even started. And here's the counterpoint to the argument of like once a week is like very aggressive, and like this is going to have this impact. First of all, we already mentioned that. I guess the question you should ask yourself is, how often is this actually going to come up where you could run into an issue where halfway through the season someone LLs and then you have to like make this big change, right?
Mm-hmm.
But here's the rebuttal that I haven't heard anybody talk about. What's to say that LSS couldn't come out on that Monday and say, you know what, in light of this happening and happening so quickly, we are going to extend this, and just saying, you know what, we listened to the community and like we saw how quickly this happened. We make changes on the fly very like responsively to the community. So why don't you just run with chain for the rest of these like last week so that the people that want to enjoy it can go enjoy it? There is literally nothing stopping LSS from doing that at any point within the like competitive season. They could literally have done that for, well, not for Lexi, but like let's just assume that there were enough points for Icelander, right? Like Icelander somehow earned enough points right here at the end, and they were like, you know what, it's 10 days from Worlds. Let's just go ahead and let Icelander be. They could have said that in this announcement. And they could have just said, you know what, we don't want people to miss out on the ability to play this hero if they've practiced it for this long. They could literally just call an audible at any point and just say, for this time, let's just go ahead and let it ride. There is nothing wrong with that. But I feel like because it's an official announcement, there's an easy sort of lock-in of like, this is the way it is from now until the end of time. Drone of Brutality is banned until, the end of time. Bracers of the Belief is gone. Stormstriders, always going to be illegal until the end of time in Blitz. Kano is dead. Like, none of that stuck.
One can only hope.
None of it stuck. It could all pivot back. It could all
Yeah.
come back. Stubby Hammers
Yeah.
could be right around the corner for TCG Talk to pick up and run with, because he said so on Twitter. He wants it back.
Lord, I want to call it no skin.
That's why I feel so confident in this, because they have such a strong team over there. They've made a ton of mistakes and have been so quick to correct, or at least say, hey, we hear you, or doing something, or I mean, I've say this all the time. They're new, and they're poking things and throwing stuff at the wall and seeing what sticks. And maybe this is one of those occasions, and there's nothing stopping them from saying, hey, you know what, we thought it might work. But honestly, we were talking about this earlier too. I think that could possibly be a way that they hyper, accelerate the living legend points for some of the heroes that are just are too high of a power level for where the game's going. And as soon as XYZ hero hits that, they're like, I think we're done with this format of LLing checks every week. Let's go back to normal. It's like, maybe we all have to take one for the team. They can't just say Dromai's out, Icelander's out, everyone outsiders or dynasties out. They just need to kind of hyper accelerate that. There's just going to be heroes that are lingering in the shadows for too long, I think, if they don't do something like this. But I don't know. Yeah, right. Right.
If I got one more thing to say at that point is, and this is kind of like I don't know, so maybe it's too businessy, but this is my opinion too. If y'all disagree with this, it's fine. Flesh and Blood is where it is because it caters to the competitive TCG player. Like if we talk about market positioning, I'm not gonna go too nerdy with that, but like their market position is solid. Their incremental value, very in comparison to other TCGs, extremely balanced, extremely competitive. Right? Like if someone asks you why should I play Flesh and Blood, your first answer is, well, the heroes are cool, the theme is cool, right? Like that's the casual answer if you like hero based TCGs. But the other reason is it's extremely competitive. For the most part, it's very balanced. You feel like you have a lot of agency, even with the stuff you don't feel like you do. It's still more than most card games. So like that's why that combined with amazing timing, right when COVID started, that's like why they are where they're at, right? So if you strive, I'm saying that because we said like how's it feel for the casual player. I'm not speaking for LSS whatsoever. I'm just saying internally, are they saying like, okay, who do we care more about? Like what there's always going to be negativity, but where do we want the negativity to come from? Do we want to make sure our competitive scene stays completely happy? Or, you know what I mean? Because like someone mentioned in the chat, like, I don't want to have two decks. Well, that's for like the casual or semi-casual player. Competitive players are willing to switch most of the time on a dime if they have to. If they think it's the best deck, they're going to go get the best deck. I mean, in the in the Dallas Fort Worth Discord right now for Flesh and Blood, everybody's like, who's got a twin drive? Like it's like they're selling crack. So it's like that's because that's what they think the best deck is, and that's what they want to play. Or like one of the best decks. Anyway, so it's like market positioning. Like as LSS moves forward and the game actually expands, right? And they actually do start hopefully knocking on the door to the top 3 in the next like 5 years, right? Do you want to stay known as the hyper competitive TCG? Do you want to go more of a thematic role and be like, we don't have a backed IP, but we're super big, like thematic, hero driven, class driven game where you can identify? Like, do you want to try to marry both of those? You know what I mean? So I think that's another thing we're gonna have to see is which way they go with that, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and we spoke about this earlier, but I think that the thing that's, if they do decide to stick with this, like Steven, to your point, say this is until the end of time. They don't bring back Stormstriders. They're gone forever. And they say, you know what, instead of pulling this away, we are going to stick with this Living Legend, whole roadmap. But instead, we're actually going to introduce Living Legend as an entirely separate format that LGSs pick up, and you can actually go and participate. That Wednesday night's your standard constructed night. You got Tuesdays Blitz, and Fridays you have Living Legend format, and they're going to provide price support and all the way through. So that way it caters to those people that say, you know what, I am a specialist on this hero, and I'm not really interested in the next 2 sets that have leaked already. I'm just going to keep playing Living Legend every Friday, and I get my fix. I get to be my specialist and check that box for this game. And then when something else comes my way and in the form of a new hero, maybe I can take some of these cards that are in this deck and apply them to this new hero, and I only have to buy half a deck, or the typical XYZ card that you already have to buy for a new hero. So I think that's the big win out of it, is if they decide to go that route and say this is how we're doing it, but we want LL to be a complementary alongside Blitz and constructed from the ground up. From
Steven, can
LGS.
I ask one question before we go to specialist too? I want y'all's opinion on it. This is not me trying to stir the pot. I'm just saying it's funny. Is it weird that the Battle Hardens have the same point allocations as a national championship with over 96 players? So if a random 40-person Battle Harden in whatever country, it can be the United States, doesn't matter, has 40 to 50 people, that's the same as like a 200 U.S. national championship. I find that very funny. If y'all don't have an opinion on it, it's fine. But that was the 1 point allocation where I was like, wait a second. I've been at Battle Hardens, there were like 70 people, 60 people, and the U.S. National Championship is literally like a gauntlet, and they're both the exact same.
Well, okay,
well,
so
that's
let
the
me ask you
biggest
this.
update, right?
if you're looking at a battle hardened this past year, like look at how the attendances have been for the battle hardens, at least of the ones that I've been to, which is a lot
Hmm.
of the US ones.
Yeah, you've been a lot more than me for sure.
Right. The attendance numbers have been, I mean, doing
Plus
pretty
100.
well for what would be considered a smaller regional event up until this point. So I guess the question mark is, okay, if these are actually pulling players in more than just a small regional event and are sort of becoming pseudo callings, like mini callings, is it worth giving more points to those because there's a larger player base and a higher percentage of these sort of top players, or just in general there's like a higher player amount and then player skill level? Is it worth giving in the future more points to those? And that's an interesting question. I mean, because uh you could almost look at some of the numbers for the turnouts for some of the battle hardens here in the US over the past 6 months, and you could go, wow, that's basically what a calling was in DFW, or the calling was in Taipei. Like the same sort of thing there. But that's an interesting, I guess, a decision point that they've made to at least try for the foreseeable future. But we've seen them increase point totals twice now on the Living Legend system, maybe even more
Hmm.
than twice. There's, again, nothing to say that
Twice
they
this
do this.
year.
Yeah, twice this year. Nothing to say that they do this for like 6 months to a year and say, you know what? Looking at the way that these point totals broke down, there's more points going out now than there have been ever before, and maybe it's a little too much. Maybe we scale that number back, or maybe the attendances
Mm. There's a
kind
lot
of
of
go
people.
back to reflecting more of a
Yeah,
regional thing, right? And then they're like, okay, well
yeah,
now we can pull this back to where it was before. So that might be interesting.
yeah. I guess I'm wondering too, because people are saying that in chat is like attendance could influence LL. So I wonder though. I think us knowing ahead of time how many points are allocated to the event is very helpful, like
Sure.
projectioning and
Yeah,
planning,
true.
and just
That
and
makes
instead
sense.
of being sitting down at a con and be like, hey, did you guys hear how many people are here? And then like trying to get those numbers and feel it out, like, oh, we're just under the cap. Okay, so we're going to be at 40, X amount of points, and so there is a little bit of weirdness. So I don't know. It seems I'm sure they've thought that through, but
Yeah, I know
that
there's a reason. I just thought that was funny when I saw the point allocations. I was like,
yeah, yeah.
but yeah.
I want to point this
I
out.
wonder.
Some people
Yeah.
mentioned in chat earlier that it feels very confusing for LSS to go into a special scenario, a special case, and say, hey, because of this special case, let's go ahead and not do that. But I feel like that's the opposite of confusing, because I think the only, I personally believe, and y'all tell me if you think the same thing. I personally believe that okay, I'm about to go into the middle of this season and this hero could LL or could not LL. I feel like that's going to be the exception and not the rule in a majority of seasons, particularly
Totally.
if we get 15 plus heroes into the meta going forward. It could be CC, could be Blitz and CC. 15 new heroes is a lot of heroes. I feel like that's more the exception, and so it would delineate or require a special scenario of, okay, this is an especially weird moment wherein this hero went from like half the number of points to like in a weekend way too many points and spiked. Maybe they say let's just let that hero play it out. So that was what I was trying to point to, and I do feel like that a special scenario would be less confusing because you're jumping in and trying to, like, again, be very agile, like Zero TCG said, which I think is a great definition of LSS. I feel like LSS is
Mhm.
pretty agile when it comes to looking at what is serving the community and what's not, and then making the change.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
Parker, you said earlier that the LL format could be sort of a feature going forward, and I tend to agree with you on the idea that
Yeah.
LL format with these sort of point spreads going forward can actually sort of push that into becoming more of a full-fledged format. Because as of right now, going into the World Championship, the LL format is basically like no bans, everyone's allowed, everyone's invited,
Mhm.
go and play in
Mhm.
that. But if we get a few more heroes rotating, let's say a Dromai picks up a win at the World Championships, and then a couple other things, and then she's gone. Or like what's the next one down besides Dromai? Like, is it Dash?
I think it's
Dash is like right
Icelander,
there.
no?
It's
Oh, of course,
Icelander.
Icelander.
During
Yeah,
its dash,
It's
yeah.
Icelander,
yeah.
then Dromai, then Dash, something like that, right? If
Yeah.
those
Yeah.
heroes like just gain a lot of points and have more capacity to gain points with higher point totals being given out. And of course, a weekly check cutting off the point totals that would kind of snowball over past the 1,000 point threshold and then feed those points into heroes that would actually win them when that hero rotates,
Mm-hmm.
unlike we had with like Starvo and other things like that. That could push more heroes into the Living Legend status, which you can consider the true eternal format of the game. And then Classic Constructed almost becomes like a sort of a standard rotating format, and LL format is that perhaps a new flagship. Is that where you think that this is sort of complementing that strategy, or do you think that's sort of an ancillary benefit that was perhaps on the sort of back burner?
I don't know. I feel like it could be more ancillary or ancillary. What did you just say? Ancillary.
One of those words, just pick one, go with it.
Auxiliary.
That's not the word either. Well, that's not it at all. But auxiliary works. That's probably like a better one.
Good. You're
It's
good. We
probably
know what you
better.
mean.
Uh, I think it was more on the second hand. So, but I think that's part of it though, right? Like I think they want these heroes not gone, but I think they're ready for them to move on. They've clearly they've said Fab 2.0. They had big plans for Fab 2.0, and I think they started to recognize I mean, even back whenever they were introducing ice, they're like, the games are too fast. We need to slow the games down. And then the games completely stopped because of ice. And they said, oh my God, we need to get ice out of here. We need the games to pick back up. So they're like constantly feeling the field and making adjustments for that. So I think this is just another one of those ways that they're doing that. And in that, they're actually able to capture a whole nother audience of Living Legend people. Because to your point, like right now, people have been thinking, oh, I can't wait to play Living Legends. It's almost been treated like another UPF side event, right? It's like, oh, that's going to be fun. But I think a year from now, 2 years from now, it could be its own, like, actual, you could have a Living Legend calling. Like, you could have Living Legend full-fledged tournaments. And I don't see them from that, but I don't think that's their driving motive for doing this, to be at least my opinion.
What do you think, Dylan? What's your thought on that?
Well,
Yeah,
so
what's
I
your
said it with
auxiliary thought?
Yeah,
oh my
give us
god,
give us
I
the
said it with y'all as I
ancillary.
think one of my it's not really a hot take. It's just like a emphatic statement. Is I think Living Legend format will be the I'm not gonna say the one of the two premier formats in the game period in a year. I think it'll literally be held on the same level as CC, both from a community standpoint and an LSS standpoint. I think it'll be supported almost as equally. It'll be like tier 1 and then 1.5. Because that's just in my opinion a successful living legend format fixes almost everything. It says, hey, Dash is at six. Also, it's funny. Dash is at 698 points right now. If Dash had 2 more points, she could LL at Worlds, but that's another thing. That's the funny thing. I could tell someone right now with Dash at 700 points, like, hey, you can buy twin drives, you can buy all that. And yes, you only gonna be able to play it in CC, but if you love Dash, Living Legend format has 2 callings coming up and 3 battle hardens. You can go
Right.
play it at that. And there's going to be prize money awarded to it. Obviously, it's not the point stuff, but like people care about the winnings, right? And the prestige of winning and to be frank, the money that comes with it, right? So and just the experience. So if they hold it on the same level, it pretty much fixes all of that. Obviously,
Mm-hmm.
your hyper competitive players will be like, no, I want to play CC, but like for in my opinion, your mid tier, which of all their demographic is probably their biggest one, which is like we're kind of I guess where I'm at, right? Like not good enough to be a high tier competitive player, but good enough to like play competitively. I think that's going to really help it. And to kind of go into your point without stealing thunder, Steven, because I know you were going to ask, does it hurt specialist? I think that it doesn't hurt if they can market the Living Legend format to be successful and be almost like the tier 1.5 format for the game itself, right?
I think that's a
Mm-hmm.
literal perfect segue into my thoughts on the Living Legend format being sort of the answer to what we're talking about here, because you're talking about how the Living Legend format becoming one of these premier formats, perhaps not the premier format, but one
Yeah.
of them is sort of a stopgap, or maybe not even stopgap. Maybe it's now a selling point or the selling point de facto, if you will, for casual or new players to jump in and feel comfortable enough to commit to buying into the game, buying cards, buying a deck, and putting it together and then practicing it. Because if we look at this, just in a vacuum without the Living Legend format, and we look at these changes, then all of a sudden, if I go to someone new and I show them my Dromai deck, and I show them all these beautiful dragons, and they're like, oh my god, I wanna play this. I wanna play these permanents on the board. I wanna look at them and like wanna attack with them. I think that'd be amazing. And then they realize that, they're maybe 2 major tournaments away from not being able to play that deck. No one wants to buy in. But the moment you say to them, but don't worry, if that happens, just play in the calling. That's already scheduled for 2024. It's going to be an LL format calling. You just take the same exact deck. In fact, you just run it out there, and nothing changes. You don't have to break it up. You don't have to build something new. You can just play in this format now. And I think that right there is the biggest saving grace to perhaps this entire announcement, because if the LL format is something that is going to see continued support and continued pushing by LSS, then anyone that wants to get their friend into Flesh and Blood can do so off of any deck in the game and do so with sort of impunity. Yeah, let me tell you, legend tells of a hero called Starvo. And you can still hear the triple fuse to this day, because you can go play it this weekend. We got an LL format tournament going on. And that is a big, big deal. And one of the reasons why I feel like, yes, it can feel very negative from a very competitive Classic Constructed player's perspective to know that, more of your, time and effort put into it is going to possibly lead to that hero just moving on quicker. But it could also mean that you just now take that deck and all those reps and all that specialist time that you've put into it into an LL format, which I do believe is not just going to stay Wild West forever. I think this first one,
it can't.
No, the first one's going to be
Otherwise,
Wild West. It's going to be
if
crazy.
I get Awakened
right?
one more time, my YouTube channel might be deleted. No, I'm just kidding. It's that bad. Please.
Because one day Arachne's going to get Living Legend status, and he's going to have 0 chance against Starvo.
Or
Viscerai.
Are they though?
One day.
Are they?
Who's
Viscerai
going to get Living Legend first, Arachne or Viscerai?
Oh, see, those are bets. Right
Arachne for sure.
Viscerai's like guarantee. 6th highest on the list too. He has 500 Living Legend points.
Those are all Skeleton points.
Oh no.
Okay, hold on. I have to ask chat this poll. I'm gonna poll
Are
chat.
they though? One day.
Are
they? That's right.
I would vote Arachne, actually, not being funny. I might.
LLs.
Actually, no.
I agree.
LSS loves Runeblade. He's eventually going to get something.
But they keep giving us non-go again. Reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a blue, make a rune chant.
I keep telling people though, Assassin is 1 or 2 busted cards away from being a very annoying class in the format. They're the hardest class to balance, but that's a different topic for a different day.
So something I want to say too before we get too far from it. Oh, let me participate in this vote. All right, there we go. Is I sent you guys a screenshot of Blake Meyer, amazing player, was on 3 floating, I think he was playing with Sam a couple weeks ago, but he posted a tweet, and I'll read it. It says, "I like the weekly LL checks because I can only imagine what the 500 extra Starvo LL points trickled down to the other heroes and the domino effect that would have been." And we see that with Lexi, right? So how many points is Lexi at now? How many excess of 1,000?
100.
I don't. Yeah, so that's 200 Living Legend points.
Yeah.
And I think they're seeing that trajectory, and I think that's their big okay, if we would have stopped this week of her hitting 1,000, those 200 LL points could have been allocated and spread more evenly to other heroes, and we could have helped create a more balanced environment. And so, what's Starvo at? 1,800 or something ridiculous?
Between all the Living Legend formats, or Living Legend heroes, there's 1,000 extra Living Legend points between all of them. If you add them,
right? So
it's a full hero,
an entire hero,
points, right? Yeah.
So
no, which I think, and fundamentally, I think that is a really good argument for making some sort of a mid-season change, right? Because if we want the system to function as intended, then we don't allow 300 points to go basically to waste off of the back of this really powerful hero. But then I guess the rebuttal to that is, if we're powering down the game, is that actually going to happen? Maybe it doesn't. But maybe it does, because there's always a best deck in the format. I don't know. It could also just be that there's always a best
Yeah.
deck, and so eventually when it gets found out and the meta gets quote unquote solved in a paper game that doesn't have an online client to the same degree that like something else does, you know, maybe the everyone just pivots to that. But I guess that's for
Yeah.
us to find out as we go over the next year, whether or not that actually comes to pass. But you were talking about specialists. Do you
Mm.
think this hurts the pure specialist that focuses on just playing Viserai at the highest level?
You want to start with this, Parker? You want? Yeah.
You got strong feelings about this, I think.
No, not
We're both
strong.
we're
Yeah,
both
we're
kind of
both
specialists.
specialists. We are both
Yeah.
specialists, but so I think you're a class. Well, you like Viscera the most, obviously, but I also think you're a class
Yeah.
specialist, and I'm a hero specialist, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'll be straight up about it, and it's okay because it's my class. I hate Fi. I hate playing Fi. It's so boring. So I'm a Katsu main through and through, but I do think it doesn't. It hurts hero specialists. It doesn't hurt class specialists. And I have no data to back this up. It's just an opinion. I think most people that are at you have people who just play everything, but I think a large majority of people have an affinity with a class. And then on the top of that
Hmm.
class, then you have an affinity with a hero. If you have affinity with a class, it's really not going to hurt you. There's all like right now, Ranger, Lexi's leaving, Riptide and Azalea both are super fun. And like the highly competitive Lexi players are just going to go to the next best deck. But if you love Ranger, like you have two really good Rangers that even though Riptide's a little bit lower in power level, he's got Bullseye Bracers back though. Like it's fun. And there's different feelings to that. And then Ninja has Katsu and Fi. Runeblade's a little bit down right now, but even though like they're both kind of like Vincett's super fun to play in my opinion, even though she's not as good. Like people have an affinity with a class. So if you're a class specialist, I don't think this hurts you at all because LSS is always going to print like new stuff for your class. If you're a hero
Hmm.
specialist, then yes, this sucks. But at the end of the day, like if I was going to be super honest with a new player, if they said like I want to play your game because of Katsu, I would be like, that's great, but let me caveat Katsu could be gone in 2 years, right? Like if I were you, I would try to find a class style that you like and then play that class. But that's just my
Hmm.
opinion. If I was gonna be super like candid with a new player, but I guess that's my answer.
What do you think,
Yeah.
Parker?
Yeah. I agree. I think that's a point that I didn't really think about. That when we were talking about it earlier, I was just thinking specialists. I didn't like mentally separate that. Yeah, there are a lot of people that are class specialists and hero specialists. I think more so to your point. I agree. I think there's more. I don't know. Actually, I'm not going to say that there's one more than the
Yeah, I
other.
have no data backing it.
Uh,
It's just my
I
opinion.
would say
yeah,
anecdote. I was just thinking this. I would say
yeah.
anecdotally, I 100% think that people
It's
gravitate
hero.
towards heroes
Yeah,
than
Mm.
right. It's got
classes.
to be hero. And
I
then I
feel
think
like people are
yeah.
very, very rarely a class specialist because they're
Hmm.
so connected and entrenched with their hero. Sorry for interrupting. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, yeah, and I think that as they continue to develop their lore, which I think has kind of been on the back burner as they're developing their next stages for the game, as they continue to develop the lore, it's only going to grow even more so for hero specialists, right? People to get more further drawn into the story and resonate with the hero and see that play style play out the way that their story is saying that they are and things like that. So I think it could effectively hurt, for instance, me, if Viscerai was super close to hitting Living Legend, it's not the end of the world because I like Runeblade as a class. Like I would happily just be like, cool, I'll just play Vincent. I'm okay with her not being S tier right now, but that's not the case for a lot of people. So, and then that points back to Dylan's case. Like this is a competitive game. It's not. There are a lot of casual players, but it's a competitive game at heart. So people are wanting to play the better deck. That's just kind of what it is. Not everyone's happy saying, "I like playing the D tier deck. It's fun for me." But I mean, yeah, saying
No,
I am one of those people. Um, yeah,
no,
but
the
yeah, I
lore is a
don't know.
good
I don't know.
point. The lore is a
Yeah.
good point because it's like My Hero Academia right now, and see, I'll say it real quick and let you go. Is like My Hero Academia. Yes, it's backed by an anime IP. I get it. There's a difference, but you pick because there's lore, because there's a story background of those heroes. You naturally pick like certain heroes or certain echelons in that game, and like you just stick
Hmm.
with them. And I think Flesh and Blood hopefully 10 years from now, if they have built out lore and a built out IP, then you might start seeing more people pick like, okay, I love like, especially if they start building out region lore and saying like, I love the Solana like background, right? And anybody that's from Solana, if they started like building out region lore and stuff like that. But I do think their strength is it's a hero based TCG, just like One Piece, just like whatever.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, go ahead. I'll let you finish. I
No,
apologize.
no, I was gonna say I completely agree. Yeah.
Okay, so I got to throw this out there then. We say it doesn't necessarily hurt a hero specialist to lose the hero. Obviously, yes, they could play living legend status or living legend format, and I think that is a really big good answer going forward. If a hero that you love and are specialist on, and you've committed to, and you've bought all the like most beautiful cards, and you love that deck, goes away, you can pick that up in the LL format, perhaps going forward into 2024 and beyond. But if you wanted to play classic constructed and you're a hero specialist, not necessarily a class specialist, or even if you are a class specialist, I mean, how do you justify the small classes, like the classes that only have one hero? Like, for example, technically, Illusionist only has one hero right now because no one believes Prism exists in the meta in general. But even if you did, that's a 2-hero class. And let's say, like in those scenarios, what's the solution? And I think the very previous comment to this made by Camarada Kano, which is a cool name because they are literally Comrade Kano in their profile picture, which I think is hilarious. Russian Kano. Yeah. They said exactly what I was thinking. I was going to prompt you and see if y'all came up with this answer, but this is my thought to it. It's not a big deal, or perhaps it is. I mean, fundamentally, like losing your favorite character is like, you know, watching the death of your favorite TV show character, right? It's like kind of like that to some degree. But if you are then provided very quickly, a month or 2 months, 3 months after a replacement of that hero, or even better, and this is something that I think that LSS has perhaps done, it's done in the past, but perhaps setting up to do in the future, if you provide them a different version of that hero, somehow with their storyline evolved or kind of continued down, where Katsu's no longer the Wanderer, and now Katsu is, you know, like the Ronin Returned or something like that, and it feels like that same hero within a timely fashion, you could just pick up and run with that. And yeah, you can basically transfer most of the deck and make some tweaks based on what this new hero is. You can fall in love with another hero. But to me, that is the answer that I feel like if you're a casual specialist, is what we'll perhaps call them, someone who just like has been just totally committed to a specific character like the Azalea cult has. If Azalea and when Azalea goes, well, what do we do? I mean, if we're not playing LL, what do we do? Well, if LSS prints heroes 15 a year and is willing to print heroes in box sets like the round the table product, and maybe print like more stuff like that with CC heroes or Blitz and CC heroes, you could easily rotate in new heroes in place of those older heroes. And then class specialists or hero specialists or people that are stands of that hero can just fully commit to that new version of that character. What are y'all's takes on that?
Yeah, I think that's in my mind, and this goes back to like a product that I wish that they would do. I think I mentioned this like a year ago, that I wish that they would just in supplementary fashion provide these kinds of products that don't have to be designed for like Everfest style or Crucible, you know, like the actual supplementary booster boxes, but just like packs or something that could be, you know, a shadow enhancement or something. And it'd be, you know, a 40 card supplemental thing, but they come in packs of 10 and you kind of have to buy all 4 or whatever. They could do things like that where like, oh, you could get chains out of Blitz, but there's technically he'll be out of both, but but I really like to play Shadow Runeblade. Vincent's not really my style. I really like Chain, and maybe there's a way that they could just have these heroes in the can developed to just function slightly different. You know, they don't have to design an entire draftable booster set to introduce this new hero with this grand, you know, entrance and this huge backstory. They can have these things potentially in the can and be purchasable for the more casual competitive players. That's the way I would like to see it anyway. I think it'd be super cool to supplement those people that are specialist players. I didn't buy much of Bright Lights because I don't play Dash, but I'd like to get some of the cards for XYZ hero that's in that set, for instance. But so I think there's a way to work around it. I don't pull the strings at LSS. That might not be financially viable for them, but that would be a very cool thing to see.
I am gonna play not devil's advocate. I don't agree with that, but I'm not trying to rain on parades. There's two things. One, Bryson said it in chat, which was one of my points. I don't know how they would plan that because I haven't been behind closed. I've been behind closed doors, Central Cool and stuff, whatever. Been behind closed doors for set planning and like testing for 2 TCGs now. And most TCGs that I've, at least the ones I've not most, the ones I've been a part of, plan ahead about 3 sets. I don't know what LSS is. LSS has not been one of those 2 card games, by the way. So if they're, let's just say they're on a 1 year, they're ahead 1 year right now. Like you'd have to somehow guesstimate when that new hero is going to be done. Maybe you have a certain dev that does nothing but make remakes of heroes, so it's ready in the shoot when it happens, and then you're like, okay, well now we can
Yeah.
implement it now. But then you have to say, okay, well now it's got to fit in the lore because LSS is very lore driven with their sets.
Mm-hmm.
So now, like Dust Till Dawn, like let's just say I'm just gonna say a Bram hero, Azalea Living Legend, right before DTD or 2 sets before Dust Till Dawn. You can't just put her in Dust Till Dawn, right? So like there would be so many timing hoops you'd have to go through. I'm not saying it couldn't be done, just doing it consistently, especially with the LL spiking now faster. You would have to have insane timing. And then the other thing, this is more of a personal opinion. This has nothing like factual to it, but I think I'm in the minority camp on this. I don't want to see another Katsu. Like to me, it's like an old comic book series where the main character dies 8 times and comes back to life, like Marvel comics, where it's like, bro, like just let the dude die. Like let Superman stay dead, man. Because it takes, in my opinion, it takes away from the hero when you keep bringing it back. Like bringing it back once, like Prism, that was very tasteful. It made completely sense lore wise why they did that, but I don't think it would work that way for every hero. And I think it would take away, and this is just a Dylan opinion, of like the coolness of that hero and what made that hero it. And Living Legend, like your marketing, like they ascended to Living Legend, but they really didn't, right? They just the first version did. And then eventually what are you gonna do? Have 7 prisms in Living Legend 10 years from now? You know what I mean? So I'm
That's a good point.
exaggerating.
No,
But
that's a good point, actually.
but some people might like that. Like I know people that are at Reaper like play Prism even though she sucks, and they're like, we love Prism because like they want to play Prism. So like I
Yeah.
get it. It makes complete sense. It's just an opinion thing, I guess. But the non-opinion thing is timing. Timing would be very difficult with that. I'm not saying it couldn't be done, but you'd have to have impeccable planning.
No, that's a good
Yeah.
point. And I think the idea of looking long term and seeing, okay, so if this is the storyline of the character, or can we tell that without creating like 4 versions of the hero, so that maybe there are players like you that a large contingent of players that just want the hero to be the hero and don't necessarily want the storyline to be reflected in a new version of said hero. Maybe that's more of the exception than the rule, like it was with Prism, perhaps going forward. And Starvo, for example, as well, with Bravo, and then obviously him becoming Bravo star of the show. Maybe that's not what they're doing with every single person, but we have heard that Chain is going to return at some point. So there's a fine line there that should be threaded. But I think to me it goes back to the idea of like, okay, if this new Living Legends system puts more points out there, solutions will have to be made for more heroes living legending and people who are attached to those heroes to do something with said hero immediately. And again, the solution just seems to be the living legend format has to become a mainstay to some degree that players can go and play it. Because if it takes a year to bring you a supplementary hero, for example, I like my Shadow Runeblade cards, but I haven't been able to play in Chain for a year. Now it's a year and a half, and now we get a Shadow Runeblade hero to finally be able to dust off my old, Seeds of Agony and all the other, like Invert Existence, all those cards that kind of waited for me to kind of dust them back out. Now you don't have to do that, because the moment that hero LLs, just take the deck on Thursday instead of on Saturday, and you just go play the LL format. And I think that's a really good sort of rebuttal to the worry that something like this announcement might provide to people, at a more casual level or at a new player level, because they're afraid to commit to a certain hero. And I think that is the biggest thing from my perspective. how do new players, which I think are being ushered in with a great set of releases in the form of Round the Table and Bright Lights, both are very, easy, accessible, easy to pick
Mm-hmm.
up, try the game out with, and then run with. How are those players going to be served by this announcement? Well, more points go everywhere, but your hero still hits the table in Living Legend format now. I think that's a kind of a big point to check the box for.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting because like I pulled back up the Living Legend update just because I wanted a refresher on that last statement that James said, which is we would like to remind everyone that a feature of Flesh and Blood rotation model is that it only rotates hero and signature weapon cards while preserving the utility of a player's broader collection via the either immediate transfer of those cards to an existing hero of the same class/talent or future application of those cards when a new hero is released. So like that what made me think of that is when you mentioned like you gave the example of man Chain's gone. I really loved that hero. I love the cards. I love playing shadow puppetry and seeds of agony and invert existence at instant speed to kill my opponent. Those cards really from shadow puppetry aren't transferable into Vincent. Like her play pattern doesn't isn't compatible with a lot of the cards that were in the mindset during the development of Monarch. So just because this is a slight rebuttal towards James White's statement, which is that's like kind of a sentiment and kind of a like comforting thing, but also it's kind of not because we've seen Shadow, for example, there's this exact example we've seen Shadow Blade cards exist in Monarch and be completely useless in Vinset, and so it's like how long is he saying that Monarch cards specifically will have a place in future metas? Because if so, then it's too late. Like Monarch's been so far out of print, not a lot of people are going to pick it up just for up to 2 years from down the road for a hero that they want to pick up Seeds of Agony for or whatever. So it just feels like it's just interesting. I hope that there's a more focused forward thought if that's going to be part of the sentiment and comfort words that he wrote is saying, don't worry, your cards are still going to be playable in future heroes. Well, it can't be too far out in the future, and it also has to make sense for that hero's playstyle. Otherwise, those words are almost moot to a certain degree. And then it is up to the person and the deck builder to make those cards work. But
That's the big point, I think.
Monarch,
Yeah.
Monarch as a set was developed as a draftable set with cards in that set that were more cohesive for the heroes in that set.
Sure. Yeah.
And aren't probably forethought. Hey, let's make these really really cushioned for any future Shadow Runeblade hero because a lot of them are not. But that's one example at least, and I'm not saying that one example transfers to every future set with similar classes or tests, etc. But I hope that, and I have full faith that that sentiment will ring true because it seems like they're taking more of a forward thought process into helping that be true. But time will tell anyway.
I mean, I do think it's important to note as well that I mean, it's one, it's a factually true statement, and two, it also kind of asks you to actually try those cards in the deck
Yeah.
building, which I feel like perhaps not very many people have actually done. They just looked at it and they, listened to one of us yahoos that sit around and make YouTube videos and said, "Hey, this is the way to build a deck," and then they just
Yeah.
took that and they ran with it. But I mean,
Hmm.
what's to say invert existence can't go into a Vinset deck and run that out there and as a
Me.
playable, right? Like there's
I'm
still
just kidding.
a lot of I would say there's a lot of unexplored space in the deck building side of this community and just the
Hmm.
game in
Oh
general.
yeah.
And
Totally.
perhaps that's also
Yeah.
something that can be addressed through the design of cards and through the encouragement of exploration in that. But it also kind of falls to the people that are playing the game to actually just choose to go
Hmm.
and do it. And maybe it's because this game is incredibly competitively minded
Yep.
that the immediate like reaction is to figure out what the best math is and go win the tournament with said best math, and therefore we
Hmm.
don't go and explore those more kind of off the beaten path decks.
Yep.
And maybe it's just that
Which I'm
there's yeah, 100%, right? Or maybe it's just the situation where, that just doesn't work for the hero. But I think to Vinset's credit specifically, you could definitely build a deck. Her effect is broad enough and open enough that you can play many of those same cards. It's just
Yeah.
I think everyone goes, okay, is that the best thing for her? I'm only going to play the best thing. So let's go to find the best thing, and here's the best thing. Let's
Yeah,
run with it.
Yeah.
it's a community thing because like I play My Hero a lot, and I use My Hero because I think My Hero is a good example of like people just want to have fun while also being competitive. Like surprisingly, there's a store that must not be named in Plano area that has 2 of like the top 10 My Hero players in the world. And like legit, these guys are insane. Like Brody Spurlock on steroids, but for My Hero. And if you go to a weekly with them, like they'll play Snipe, who is the worst character in the game. Like Snipe is so bad, but they play it, and I'm like, why are you playing Snipe? They're like, because it's cool. I love this hero. Like, I'm sorry, and I may be weird for saying this. You hardly ever see that in Flesh and Blood. No one's like, I'm gonna play Riptide. Why are you playing Riptide? Because it's cool. Like, yes, there's people that do that. One of them's in this call. But no, like you don't see that a lot at armories. You don't even like casual armories. Like when I lived in North Carolina, which was a way more casual scene than Dallas, like very few people brought what they just thought was a fun deck to a weekly most of the time, unless they were a new player and it was their first deck. So I think it's also a community thing, but I do agree deck building is a little bit like people just build whatever they think is the best. So it kind of depends.
Viserai apparently is going to LL first, says 97 votes.
I would agree because LSS likes Moonblade.
So get ready, Parker.
I voted for Arachne.
Parker, he's about to LL because of all these new points. It's like 3, 2, 1 right there just happened.
Well, that's what I was. Did I say that to y'all? Yeah, but he's gonna LL eventually because there's gonna be no one else in the game. They'll all have LL'd, and then it's gonna be Viserai mirror matches, and one of them's gonna win enough to LL. It's gonna be
bring
fun.
Skeletor back just for that moment.
Yeah, but see, here I am complaining about Viserai, and I could just play him in LL.
You can. With Skeletor, right?
With Skeletor, exactly.
Kick back, man.
And Rosetta Thorn. Yeah. Yeah.
So here's so a couple of things. One, let's put a capper on where we sit as far as this announcement after an hour plus of talking about, how we feel about this with regards to point totals, with regards to weekly check-ins, with, the thought process being of how does this affect new players or specialists or, casual players. Where do you stand overall on this? Have you changed your mind? Are you worried? Are you more optimistic? Where do you sit? Dylan, I'm going to kick you off first.
I'll try to be definitive here because I'm usually not. I am worried because I think that if I had to sum it all up without waiting for 5 minutes, is in my opinion, this whole entire change completely relies on Living Legend format. I know that sounds like I'm oversimplifying the whole process they're going about, and I probably am. If that format is not good, it will hurt new players. It's going to be very hard to convince someone. Like I showed the prices of decks in the local Discord here at Dallas Fort Worth. I've been tracking for a year. There is only 3 decks in the game right now under $500. Bolton, I forgot the other 2. Bolton was the cheapest, like $270. And it is hard. Yeah, Bolton. It is hard to convince new players to buy into this game already. And if I tell you that your hero also might not be here in 6 months, like that's very difficult. But if Living Legend format is good and people enjoy it, armories are supporting it, not armories, but stores are supporting it, having weekly or bi-weekly LL events. There's battle hardened level events, there's calling level events. Then I think it'll be fine because now you can tell a person like, hey, you really like Katsu, okay, you also like kind of like Ninja, like buy into that class, buy the staples, play Katsu as long as you want for the next 5 years in LL, and then when they come out with another Ninja, then you can just play that in CC or whatever. I think a lot of this relies on the LL format. If the LL format does not take off, I do think this will hurt. I don't think the game will be in trouble of like dying, but I do think the game will be in a very awkward state to try to get new players, especially with the one thing we haven't talked about, all these new TCG, not new, but all these competitive. This is the most competitive TCG market we've had. It's insane. And so they have a lot of competition this year. One Piece is taking off. Grand Archive is starting to pop off hard. Lorcana is getting a lot of attention. So they're going to have a really competitive market this year.
What do you think, Parker?
I still feel pretty optimistic. And maybe it's just like my golden retriever brain that just wants to see the best in these things. And LSS is just still so new of a company. Um, I think that they don't know what works best for them right now, and there's really only one way to find out. And I think that that's unfortunate. And I hate to say that because it is at the expense of us, right? Like the players. It's at the expense of new players, people that are shopping the game and saying, "Hey, I'm interested in this." And then, this feeler, this tester, or this forever change that they've decided to make. We don't know if it's forever or not, but this change could very well, change the trajectory of the growth of the company. But at the same time, I have faith that if it doesn't work, they won't hesitant to say, "Hey, like we're reverting. It's not working." I don't think it's going to happen next month. I think they're going to let their decision go through some pretty heavy bumps, and all the comments and messages on Twitter in the world aren't going to make them say, "You know what, you guys are right. We're going to stop." They're going to let this thing play out, whether we like it or not. Um, but I don't think that they're unwise enough to let the company take financial damage before they pull the plug. I think they'll project and foresee, and they've usually got a really good pulse on the game, and are usually have a really nice contact touch base with LGS owners and get feedback from the storefront and say, "Hey, how's turnout?" I think the organized play team at LSS is huge into making sure that they're connected to what's happening on the ground. So I think that's going to be the key to the success moving forward, if they want to decide to keep it or if they want to pull the plug on it. But for now, I'm optimistic. I think it's going to make for some really interesting meta calls, and I'm just excited to see how that plays out. Like I don't think we're going to see any heroes. I think it's a little bit blown out, but I don't think we're going to see any heroes, or as frequently. I don't think we're going to see frequent heroes getting pulled due to LL mid PQ season. I don't think it's going to happen as often as people think it is, but I would love for that to happen because I want to see that meta shakeup so bad. I want to see that happen at least once. I think that'd be super cool.
I think that is perhaps the biggest touch point. And I think you touched on another thing. I think you look at how agile LSS has been with the way they change formats, the way they contact LGSs, and they really see the attendance, the turnouts, the player reception to certain things. Look at how Blitz has been handled over the past 6 months. There have been changes to Blitz to try and sort of reinvigorate players to that format here at the kind of like more casual mid-range level, and changes in the form of how you actually build the deck, and then how it's where is its place within the world championship structure. I think that's a
Mm-hmm.
huge kind of calling card to how LSS is trying to make the best possible experience to their players. But from my perspective, after having this conversation with everybody here in chat and with the two of you as well, I actually feel a lot more calm or comfortable about it than I did before. I think before I was just kind of swimming around with all these possibilities. But now I'm looking at this and I'm going, you know what? Fundamentally, and tell me if I'm wrong about this, someone in chat or y'all. Fundamentally, I don't think that this is going to have as big of an impact as everybody is making it out to be. If
I
I were
agree.
to sum this up in perhaps the most succinct way possible, I would say, yeah, this is gonna do stuff.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
gonna be as big or as like groundbreaking of a change as perhaps like the community maybe is thinking it might be, or worried that it might be. I think on the occasion where a hero gets, within 100 living legend points, there's going to be so much talk of that shift that if you're even in like showing up to a local event every now and again, people will be discussing that possibility. You interacting physically in the flesh and blood with other people that play this game, it is going to come up in conversation. So the idea, though very possible, that someone's going to walk into a store with their like their CC deck ready to roll, and then be told that, hey, that literally just LL'd, will probably happen, but it will be far less frequent than most people would think. And I do think that the biggest sort of feels bad is that possible moment for someone and for just the general community, but there's perhaps going to be so much like anticipation when a hero gets really close that we're all going to sort of see it coming. And really, I do feel for like the highly competitive players that are like, okay, it's 3 weeks until this event, it's 2 weeks until this event, and then they rotate the hero that I was prepping for. Those players
Hmm.
oftentimes are also prepping with other heroes, right? And
Straight
if
up. Yeah.
if they're a specialist in that highly competitive specialist scenario, that's probably the person that benefits the least from it, unless they have friends or a team that they can then rely on in the flesh and blood to like, hey, help me figure this hero out and let me run with this to go from. That's perhaps the biggest feels bad, and I totally think it's justified to, like for example, the Mara Ferrises of the world who are full commit on Dromai, and then Dromai LLs maybe like 2-3 weeks before like a calling. Well, the cool thing about this community and the cool thing about Mara is that we all have her back and support her in the, pursuit of her brand new hero love, which is most likely going to be, Bravo. I don't know. Should probably pick Bravo over her.
Right.
He
Obviously.
was
Yeah.
messing
Right.
Yeah.
with you,
Like
Ziri,
that's
too.
yeah,
I
like
like to
that's
do
the
that.
the funnily enough, that's the thing that I think like will be the biggest feels bad, and I don't necessarily it's going to be as big of a deal as perhaps everyone, including myself, was making it out to be in my own mind or in other people's, Twitter
Yeah.
feeds.
I agree. I think it seems like we're wrapping up, so I would challenge like a call to action for the community, everyone in the world that will see this. Like, it's very easy for these kinds of announcements to fear monger a little bit, right? Like, there are a ton of people shopping this game right now. People that we don't know yet, that haven't showed up to the LGS yet, that you'll start to see next week sitting down with a deck. And I think it's in our best interest to not scare them and be like, "Oh, I wouldn't play that next week." And like, it's best to be honest with people, right? Like, rather than over manipulate your words, make it seem like, "Oh, I don't know, man, that don't invest too much money in that." Like, let people discover things for themselves. I think letting them know where the assets are, the information, direct people to the Flesh and Blood website where they can find all the information clear as day. Let them ask questions. Don't it's very easy to be, encourage people or sway people to do one thing or the other, especially as they're just kind of poking and prodding this new TCG and they don't really know which way to go. They're looking for their LG, point them in the right direction, not necessarily scare them in the right direction, right? So it's very easy. And that's what I'm worried about seeing all the talk on Twitter is like, dude, anyone that's in this community that's not and like have a full pulse on it is probably like, maybe I'm not going to play this game anymore. And I don't think it's as severe as that. I don't think it's as severe as to scare people away from this game, which it's starting to go down that path where people are like, oh, it's going to suck for new heroes or new players. I don't think it's going to suck for new players as bad as it seems. Maybe if they're
Yeah.
picking up if they're willing to drop $1,500 on the best meta deck that's going to LL next week, maybe if they've got that kind of money to blow, like maybe it won't hurt them as bad as you think it will. But also tell them, hey, by the way, don't get too caught up if that hero's not around next week. But let
Or
people
just
make
tell
their
them
own
to go play in
decisions.
the LL format,
Right, or play in the LL format
which
every
again I do
Saturday.
think is
I
I
think that's
think
going to
is
be
going to
huge.
be the thing. Yeah, I mean, like
Yeah.
it seems like the answer, and I think you're 100% right, Dylan. I think it does. This whole announcement is sort of predicated on that becoming a thing going forward. But at the same time, like even if it's not as frequent as possible, if we kind of come back in full circle. If they're releasing a bunch more heroes and they're upping the amount of points that goes by a decent bit, are those heroes, if their power levels are at parity, are those heroes going to just like spike like we see it? Maybe not though. And when we do finally see those heroes come and the meta completely shifts and changes, will it be an exciting time? Do we have more of those exciting moments where everything feels fresh again? And I think fundamentally that's kind of what James White put in this sort of little letter out to everyone with these changes. And I mean, he's fundamentally right. It is quite fun to watch a meta completely shift and to see
Oh
two new
yeah.
heroes, one new hero and one hero that's sort of been slept on for a while, spike at the top of calling Melbourne, for example. What are your thoughts, Dylan?
Hmm.
No, I think that makes sense. It's gonna be interesting. I don't think it's gonna be as big a deal as people think it is, but it also is kind of uncharted waters. It also like we only have one lens. Like I have two complete opposite lenses. For the first year playing this game, I played North Carolina, where if we got lucky, we had 6 people at Armory, right? And because it was only 2 stores in the area. Now I play in Dallas, where there's quite literally 15 armories a week with 12 plus people. So it's like I've seen both sides of it. So I think the people that were in my first demographic are the ones that are going to be more feels bad because it's like I play my one deck. I'm in a small market. I don't want to change decks all the time. But people in like our market won't care as much. It all depends. I think at the end of the day, if I'm speaking unempathetically, like you have to make a decision as a business. What is our biggest target demo? What do we need to satisfy? We're not going to make everybody happy, but like who do we need to cater to or service to the most in order to have this product continue to sell and do things? And heroes constantly changing out, especially if they're filtering through the classes very quickly for 4 sets a year, 15 heroes a year. Like you're going to get your fix on your favorite hero, right? Like that at that pace, they could literally satisfy every class in the game right now.
Yeah.
Almost multiple times a year. And we haven't even talked about this. We won't this podcast, but they might even expand the classes. We might see, like we saw Bard. We might actually see a Bard in a real set at some point. There's Necromancer. There's like all these classes that are in the lore book that haven't even been touched yet, right? So cleric stuff like that. So
What's a
that's also
bard
a
gonna
thing.
do to a bunch of dragons, man?
Sing them to
Sing
sleep.
Pied Piper, bro.
Yeah, go
Gonna Pied
Jigglypuff on
Piper them off the cliff.
them. Yeah.
That's right. We're gonna Jigglypuff. No, here's the thing. I think we in this kind of like a weird aside, but if Flesh and Blood is a fighting game, it should be Super Smash Brothers Ultimate because that roster is insane, and I want to see that many playable characters in a game at one time. And the only way it happens now is the LL format. So if everyone could just go ahead and like pick up the LL format so that we can see like the Super Smash Brothers Ultimate roster, and then like LSS could release like alternate skins for the characters so that we can select our skin. And
Yes.
man,
I
that'd
think
be pretty sick.
that's the ultimate call to action is just go to X or whatever you want to call it and just at FabTCG and say, when are we going to be able to play LL at my LGS?
Oh yeah, that'd be fun play right there.
And just push them. Just say this is what the people want. If you're going to
I mean, I
make us
know,
LL
yeah.
this fast, let us have a place to play it on a
In
weekly
Dallas,
basis.
we're already talking about it. I think in the Discord they said they want to hold it unofficially once a month at like the major stores. So
Right. Well, they're starting casual play, right? So casual play is the newest thing for stores. So let's
That's true.
see. Let's
I'm
see
assuming they're not
what
streaming LL right at Worlds. Probably not.
I would think
doubt
not.
it.
I mean, usually you only stream the World Championship. You don't have time for the calling or the battle hard.
Yeah.
Nathan Crawford
Yeah.
says, I think this is their solution to future Lexi problems without resulting to bans. Yeah, do bans feel worse than a hero rotating faster than normal? I don't
That's
know
what
if
I
any
was talking
heroes
to you
even
about
rotate
earlier.
faster than normal, right?
We don't know yet.
I think bans always feel worse because they're not expected. You don't know when it's
Yeah.
going to happen, especially like the Bulls Outbracer one. Like that felt so bad for Azalea and Riptide players. We're just calling a spade a spade. That felt so freaking bad because Azalea's like, Jeremiah already sucks, and you just took out one of my best tech pieces to clear dragons off board on a go wide turn or push damage. Like, and neither of those two heroes literally did anything to get a ban because
Yeah.
in order to actually ban Lexi, like if we're going to be honest here, you have to get rid of Voltaire, and they're not going to do that. So like, yeah, I am totally. I'd rather 6 heroes rotate out a year than ban stuff. I like that Flesh and Blood does not ban a lot. When they do ban, it's very very specific. Like if you look back at what's not allowed in CC right now, it's like what 10 cards. So it's very very little, and
Well, you
I
can see a
want it to stay
rotation
that
coming,
way.
right? You can see an LL
Yeah.
status coming,
Yeah.
like down
Yeah.
as the point total gets higher. You can see, oh, it's getting here soon. I better start prepping. Just like in, for example, in Blitz. Like Kano is approaching that point of no return where he's going to hit LL. I love Kano in Blitz. There was a time where Stormstriders being banned basically killed Kano in Blitz for a while. He was just sort of unplayable. That came out of nowhere. That's the gut punch you're referring to, and I 100% agree
Man,
with it.
you were
But
so
knowing
sad that week.
yeah, knowing that it's coming down the pipeline, like I can mentally prepare. I can burn in effigy. No, I can build another blitz deck. And it turns out Dash IO is that blitz deck. Dash database right there.
Same
Boom.
thing.
That's the play. That's another wizard. So, but that's the cool thing is like I know it's
It's true.
coming, and so like I don't have to worry about a ban to kind of like pull a hero's power level down.
hmm
We can just watch that hero ride off, and maybe that's not the perfect solution. I mean, a power level of a hero being ridiculously high is not something you want ever. But
No, obviously, yeah.
yeah, but you don't
Yeah.
necessarily have to resort to a ban if that's the case. And especially if more heroes are there and their power level again comes to parity, like we've talked about multiple times, those point totals spread out a lot more evenly. 6 heroes win a calling in the past, 6 different heroes, 6 different callings, that sort of stuff. Then you don't have to worry about it necessarily as much. And that seems like the right call, right?
Yeah. This is something that I've seen talked about too a lot, is that people think that this is in response to, or well, maybe not in response to, but it's this or banning. And this is what the LSS has chosen. Instead of banning cards, they've chosen to just push heroes out. And I don't know if that's factual. I've seen that, and I'm curious what you or everyone else thinks. If it was this or that, I don't think it's as black and white as, oh well, we have a problem on our hands. This card or this hero, Lexi with 3 of a kind, and all we could ban all this stuff, but Lexi would be here forever, so therefore we have to ban this stuff. Well, no, I don't think it's as black and white as that.
I
Well,
agree with that.
and
I think it's
yeah.
shades of gray.
And it's like Nathan
That
just said in chat, if they're really trying to scale the power level down, right? They're trying to go back to an incremental value, like really grindy matchup. Every time, like then heroes naturally should actually LL at the same pace. It just won't feel
mhm,
as bad if they actually can stay at the power level. Now that's again a whole nother conversation of can you keep the power level low and still keep the game interesting? That's on them.
mhm,
But yeah, like for example, we have what 8 cards banned in 4 years of play and 2
mhm.
suspensions. But then you have stuff, and this was public. Like another feels bad thing was, and James White came out and said this publicly at last World, so that's okay to say it. He literally said when we banned Ball Lightning, we did not realize the effect it would have on Starvo because their natural counter internally to
Right.
Starvo was Ball Lightning Briar was supposed to
Under
run
run, yeah.
Starvo off the field, but when they banned Ball Lightning, they're like, pardon my French, shit, like crap, like we can't. Star Wars gonna. There's no aggro deck in the format now that can like really put a, at least currently, that can put a hard cap on him because Plunder and Ball Lightning are gone, and that was something they didn't test for because you can't because it's a ban. There's no way to
Right.
test for that.
Yeah.
So that's another feels bad thing.
It's a good point. I think I've
Mhm,
seen this a
mhm.
couple of times. Himmel mentioned this at the start of the stream, and then has mentioned it again. It's like, what is this? What is the LGS sort of impact to something like this? And I think Mara mentioned it in a tweet and mentioned that this is going to have a major impact on LGS attendance on the week where a hero rotates mid-season. But I think she was referring to it as sort of a bad thing. But what are your takes? Because to me, I looked at that and I was like, well, yeah, I mean, but if there's a very powerful hero that's clearly, topping a lot of events, and then that hero rotates in the middle of a season, that means that players can go into a brand new meta and try things that they
Yeah.
hadn't tried before. For me, I feel like it would
Mhm.
perhaps almost give a positive player bump in attendance to some degree, but that's just me thinking, on the first level. Maybe I'm missing a level step down.
I completely agree. Yeah, like if if Icelander, let's say Dromai's already gone, and Icelander goes mid PQ, I'm showing up to the next PQ with Viserai with like heavier confidence, right? Like knowing that I don't have to clear dragons, knowing that I don't have to deal with ice. Mid season, I'm like, all right, cool, I'm gonna go show up. And maybe that caters to specialists though, because maybe the specialists sat out this one because they didn't want to play into that meta, and they knew that this hero could LL, and they're like, cool, I'm off the bench, I'm going to play. And as opposed to, if you were already playing anyway, I don't think it would affect you. The only way that it would attendance is if the boogeyman was gone mid-season and all the kids could come out to play in a fresh meta.
Right. I guess the only other argument is that like everybody loves the best deck that just rotated, or everyone loves, maybe it's like somehow it's like a tier 2 or 3 deck that everybody really
Mhm.
enjoys, and then it rotates, and then player attendance goes down. Like, see, I'm not sure it would have
Yeah, I
a
don't.
big negative player impact. What do you think, Dylan?
No, I don't think it would. I think the only time it would is like our area, like right where everyone's grinding Lexi and Jeremiah,
Right.
meta junkies. I think that does affect it. I do agree with what she said. Is not everybody is glued to social media. Not everybody is following the app, or not the app, the website. So it would feel really freaking bad. Like again, North Carolina demographic, my last demographic. None of those guys checked the Living Legend leaderboard. They got told by Sam, our store owner, that a hero is now banned. Um, yes, that was early days of the game, but that's just how it was. So it is going to feel bad if someone shows up with a Jeremiah deck in January and they're like, you can't use that. And they're like, what do you mean? Especially if, let's say, they, over the holiday season, they didn't go to an armory. And then January comes like 1 month later and they're like, yeah, it's banned. It's like, oh. Like, again, I don't think it's going to like kill the game, but there will be, I think, some slight feels bad moments with the speed of Living Legend because not every demographic is super in tune with social media and websites. So it's on the stores to do that. And like the second thing I want to say really quick, and this is armchair quarterbacking 100%, but I wish companies like LSS would, like for fun, or like would do like A/B testing with stores, like send out a questionnaire of like being like, hey, at the next armory, can you give this out to your players and tell them like we want to improve the community? Please answer this, and then send it back to us. And like then you can ask questions like, do you affiliate with just one hero? Do you affiliate with one class? If a class were to go away, what class would you play next? Would you continue to play the game? Like questions like that, so they could actually like maybe get back into what they're doing. But again, that's an armchair quarterback thing. That's a different topic. But yeah,
We could
to
just
answer
do
your
that.
question, yeah, I
We should
don't
just do
think.
that. Let's
Oh
make
yeah,
our own Google form.
to 1,000
Make a
person.
make a Google form.
Be like Nathan Crawford and put out a freaking poll.
Yeah, we could. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Just
Yeah,
to
no, for sure.
anecdotally, see what that would look like. I think it. I mean, the idea of like someone showing up, and we talked about it a couple times, and like finally figuring out that like, oh, that hero's banned or LL'd, so that you have to make that pivot. Just goes back to perhaps the biggest and most important takeaway that we have from this stream thus far, and that's the idea that Breezy pitched of well, stores just need to rent decks out. I mean, this is period. This is the new business model, and I think that
Me and
during
Hemel
this,
already have a business plan started. We have an LLC, so
you did that in the span of this 90-minute stream. You're like, hey, this is
yeah.
a great idea. Quick, here's the plan. This is the you formed an LLC in this. All right, well,
Yeah, yeah.
if you're in the chat currently, you are now a part owner of this. So all 149 of you, along with us
Mhm.
on this call, we now own a portion of that business. So let's go public,
Mhm.
start trading in
Your
stocks.
first, yeah.
How
Your
much do
first
you
deck
stay in the
rentals,
Viscera rental
10%
at?
off. That's the starter. That's like for new players if they want to just. That's like if you want to come in and get a feel for what we offer.
And when they
We'll let
Oh
you
yeah,
realize
just.
that
like
this
the
is not
starter,
working,
the free
it's like, okay, try this
promoter.
real hero, is what you
Yeah, I was
say.
about to say
It's
you
like,
want them to have a good
Yeah.
one so they get excited with it. No, I'm just
Oh,
kidding.
that's true. That's true.
Yeah, I mean,
I think that's honestly, I think that's a hilarious, like, cool idea of like just have like these, I don't know, almost hidden decks. Man, like 3 years ago, no, it was like 2 years ago, I guess, because the game. Well, maybe it was 3 years ago at this point now. 3 years ago, I did a little series of like short streams where I had blitz decks, and I built like 7 blitz decks, and I put them all in different Ultra Pro deck boxes like this, and I did
Mm-hmm.
not color coordinate them at all to what hero was in there and what blitz deck it was. And I sat down with a friend and we streamed games, and I let them just pick what color they wanted for me to play that deck, and I would just play that deck. And that was some of the
Yes.
most fun, like casual games, because like I didn't have any control over what I was playing. This is the same thing. We just need to start a rental program.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
like you check it out. You have like a library card, library of Solana card, and you check out the deck, and then you have to
Oh
return it.
yeah.
See, this is
Yeah.
foolproof.
The upfront cost is pretty heavy, but the profit's going to rake in pretty quickly.
There is a ghost, a poltergeist thumbs
Yeah.
upping on your face.
What was that?
Did you somehow do that?
I'm not even touching my computer.
Was
The
that
g-
really? Did that show up on the
the
stream?
what was?
I'm
The
gonna
ghosts.
wait. How did that?
There it is.
Is it doing it
The,
again?
no, it's just that's on stream. The ghosts
Holy
agree with this
crap! How did
idea.
you do that? Is there a
Dude, I don't know
button
what
that you
that is.
pressed for that? That's impressive. Well,
That
either
was
way,
awesome.
chat clearly
What
likes
was?
that
Oh, I
idea.
just saw that. What the
And
heck?
so does my aunt who passed away also agrees with you that
Right.
that is
She
the
said.
that's
She
the
said.
play right there. Channeled all the energy so that they could press the thumbs. How did that function? Who did that?
I have no idea.
I
The
have no
ghost of
clue as
future
well,
tech
but that
rentals.
is
Good idea.
it's the ghost of future deck rentals. I don't know. That seems like the best case
Crazy.
scenario that we've learned from all of this. So we will pursue
Yeah.
that as a business opportunity now and going
Mhm.
forward.
Yeah.
All right.
Find us
Final
at your
moment
LGS.
for questions from the chat or talking points. Otherwise, we're going to wrap this bad boy up. So sound off in chat. What in the world?
What was that?
The soundboard. Discord has soundboards now. I will not spam it, but you can do sounds.
Oh, was that you?
I feel like
Yeah, that was me just now.
Wow.
Dylan's just screwing with us over here.
No, I didn't do Parker's. I have
He
no idea. how to do
definitely
that.
did those thumbs up.
There's
It was
no
like-
way. Anyway, yeah.
I am
questions.
fairly certain that you're doing all of this and you're just the evil mastermind behind it all.
How many
way.
heroes do you expect to LL and Blitz this skirmish season?
With
Ooh,
two
that's a good
4
question.
points per person.
I'm
Two?
looking at it right now.
3?
I think it's
Kasai,
who's closest?
Chain,
Kasai?
and Kano are the 3 candidates, right? They're the closest?
Yes. No, Ira's second or third right now.
Oh,
Because
yeah,
I's below Ira, but they're
No
like
one plays Ira.
15 points
Yeah.
apart. Oh my god.
not as long
You're
as
right.
there's
Ira will
not as long as
because no
Katsu's
one
around.
will play Ira because
You can't do drone
Ira's
stuff
boring.
anymore.
Yeah, but
Oh,
now
yeah.
I'm bittering thorns.
Oh, there are nearly 1,900 LL points for Blitz this skirmish season.
Wow.
That's a lot of points.
I think Asai, Ira, Kano, and Shane all probably get close.
They all go. I think they all go.
Ira might not just because of play. Not a lot of people play Ira, which is sad. But I think Asai, Chain, and Kano do.
7.
6 to 7.
Wow. Okay, name the 6 or 7. Like name.
Yeah.
Obviously the 4 we just mentioned: Kasai, Ira, Chain, and Kano.
Well, it's 4 for skirmish now. Never mind. So it's going to change a lot.
506 Blitz skirmish events. It's your new Prism. Yeah, like I said, I think Vincent and Blitz is nasty, but I don't think she's going to LL.
I'm pulling it. Fab TCG. Here we go.
Yeah, I wish we could see your screen.
Oh, new Prism.
Mm-hmm.
I could see that.
I'm looking at it right now.
I could see that.
Phi, Benji. Really, Phi? I don't know.
Benji, huh? Benji did have his day. He had his day outside of Everfest, but
I got too much from around the table. Benji will get there. Interesting. I'd love to hear the 6. Dash could do it. Dash actually, yeah, that makes some sense.
Wait, people think Benji. Man, what copium are y'all on? I love Ninja, but holy crap.
Needs like 488 points.
It's like everyone in my Discord asking for a Katsu skirmish list. I'm like, don't play Katsu. That's my response to you. Play Ira.
What's the future of talents? Elemental has proven to be kind of leagues above the others. How do we balance? Good question.
I think they stopped talents.
Yeah, they stopped.
2024.
People disagree with me, and I've had several people go against me on this, and I will be the first one to say I'm wrong. I think they completely go away from talents. If they do talent, so okay, I'll rephrase. They will bring talents back, but it'll be all thematic. It will not be power. Like it will be Dust Till Dawn. Like if we call Spade a Spade, Dust Till Dawn's a very underpowered set, and they did that on purpose because they do not want talents to be what they are. Right now, talent heroes are actually mopping the floor with regular heroes, and I don't think they're ever going to go back to that, personally. Or if they do, it'll be like 3-4 years from now when they've got their bearings, they understand power level exactly how they want it, and then they can tune it. But that's my opinion.
Nathan, one of Nathan's 4 was, or one of Nathan's was Yoji.
I could see Yoji with the popular kind of pick there as far as like the fatigue side of things. It was interesting and like intriguing as well when you ran that, like people running the like hyper fatigue Yoji in Blitz, and you had to do like weird stuff to beat that deck, and sometimes you just didn't.
I fatigued
Yeah.
Yoji in skirmish with drone Ira, but only because I had drone. That was the only
Right.
reason I won it.
Yeah.
Without drone, I would have gotten fatigued.
See, I would play weirdly enough, when Yoji was getting really popular, I was playing the version of Kano that was all about the Surgeon Aethertide. And
Mm-hmm.
funnily enough, you could actually like go to a third cycle and like pitch stack like arcane damage kills against that deck, but that was like one of those weird things that you just had to figure out how to do, and it functioned, but it was like just awkward.
What do
Um
you think about Emperor with Tome now?
oh, actually, you know what?
Emperor goes straight to the top when
Emperor
Kano's
with
gone.
Tome is actually going to be pretty dumb.
That's
Like, if you
literally
think
about to
about
say
it,
Emperor as
like
soon as
straight
Kano's gone.
Arcane Emperor
Yes.
being able to draw into a 5-card,
Oh.
6-card hand and just go ham.
Why didn't I think
Mhm.
about that? Crap, now I
Yeah.
need to build that deck and take it to Worlds.
Oh,
Dang,
it's
that's
so
so
fun. It's so
good.
fun.
Emperor with Tome is going to be pretty fun.
Okay, so I've been taking apart my Emperor deck because I like ran max rarity Emperor cards. So I had like my like foil alpha sigils of solace and like sink belows and
Oh my God.
things. And like just because I wanted to like make it ridiculous, and I was trying to make
It's
it
the
as like
Emperor. Yeah.
stupid. Yeah, exactly, because it's like super thematic, right? But I've been taking it
Mhm.
apart because it's easier to just like vulture from that deck to build my other decks. Because all the best cards go into that deck. You're running like E
Right.
strikes, CNCs, and like sinks and fates and like all that stuff, right? So Emperor seems like a good kind of back on the saddle type card. I like
Oh, yeah,
that.
Hamilton. To the talented thing pointed out, yeah, I think they're going to pivot more towards dual class and
Mhm.
play in that playground for a little while before they bring like, you know,
Just
any powerhouse talents back into the game
dual class allows you to increase flexibility without increasing power.
and makes an insane draft experience.
Oh
Oh,
yeah, Outsiders is best draft Fabs had. Also, someone said, does Bravo get there? That's a random question, but yes. I mean, Bravo had 156 points this season. I think Bravo will get there. It's just going to take a while.
I think Pirate is the next thing.
has to be.
You
They're
want
doing it.
Pirates,
They're slow dripping it to us right now. So
Riptide's
Think
a pirate.
Pirates. He is a pirate. I would agree with you, actually. Or maybe just a straight up smuggler. I mean, read his lore.
yeah,
He was
Yeah.
for a time.
there's a
He was.
fishmonger. Yeah,
I want a Karu from Mysteria at some point.
Dude,
Damn it.
that's I'm telling you, man. I don't know. I feel like those are the heroes that would perhaps LL, but y'all have some really good points on the Emperor side of things. Mech
Steven's
Warrior.
cooking. He's cooking in his head right now.
I'm just thinking about pirates again.
Oh.
It just makes so much sense. It just makes so much sense in this game.
What coast are they plundering?
That's the best part.
Is there?
The entire
All-
thing's a
all of 'em?
coast. Yeah.
I was about to say.
I was
There's
gonna say where are they introduced? Like what coast are they introduced plundering? I guess would be the
That's a good question, because like like in the lore for Arya, they hinted that the veil that separates Arya from the rest of the world is sort of like is sort of waning, and because of that, outsiders are coming in and attacking.
okay.
Outsiders being the people that live, outside of the wall that basically protects Arya. Assuming that's what they mean, and not like outsiders as in the sense of like from another plane of existence, like Irathiel or something like that. So there's clearly some amount of, marauding going on in this world already. There's nothing to say that you couldn't just put that on the coast and go from there. But then again, it also reaches all the way around to where the pits kind of docks, right? And then you could
That's
basically
true.
say that they can, feed out of the pits and then sail around the entirety of the coast.
They could be sky pirates.
No. Okay, so funnily enough, James White actually pitched that idea to me. He was like, "What if they were sky pirates?" I was like,
Oh,
"It
really?
just doesn't feel like pirates, man." He mentioned it in passing, and I was like,
Clouds aren't
"Pirates would
waves.
be cool," and he was like, "But they could be sky pirates," and I was like, "They could be, Mr.
I think it's
White."
because he also doesn't know where they would come from. It's like where do they?
But no, they could come from literally like Volcor. Are you kidding me? You telling me like a band of, so Volcor before it was conquered by the
Volcor makes
Emperor.
sense.
Yeah, come on.
Mhm.
But before it was
Yeah.
conquered by the Emperor, It was, or sort of united by the emperor. It was a literal just marauding band of warlords. What if one
That's
like splinter group that lost their warlord decides, forget this, let's just go become privateers. We're just going to go sail,
yeah.
do the job for the highest bidder, call it a day. That's the one right there. There it is.
Yeah,
I just feel like you could
Zaria
do
said,
it.
"Why not just Marauder as a class?" Would that check your box?
It's not a
It has
pirate.
to be pirate.
No, I mean, like,
Not
you could
pirate.
call it a marauder, but if it does the pirate things, I think I'd be okay with it.
Okay.
If you called it a marauder and then like did the pirate things, sure, I'm in. I'm in. I'd buy that. Like, I guess even Sky Pirates to some degree, it doesn't have the same allure. Like the beauty of the open ocean and sailing like wherever you want, like that sort of like romantic freedom. There's that to it. I think
Yeah,
that's the
yeah.
most alluring part about the idea of sort of a pirate class is like seeing all this beautiful art with like the ocean and like like these big action shots with waves and things like that would be cool. That
Yeah,
would
and
be cool.
Scarlet, yeah.
I don't know how much the map makes, how much things on the map make like a difference, like if they're actually mean something. Because like for example, heavy hitters, I think is what on the left side of the map where the elephant tusk is, right? But that was
Mm-hmm.
not a
Yeah.
marked place on the map. But then in the top left section of the map, you have that like coliseum looking thing in the middle of the open water that no one talks about. So like there's certain
Right.
key points on the map that are interesting.
Mhm. Mhm.
I mean, the only two places we haven't gone now is what, the monastery and Mysteria. So
Well, technically, we have been to the monastery. It's just currently flying, so
oh
that's
yeah,
the thing.
Yeah.
yeah.
Yep,
Mm.
indeed. All right. Well, I think that that puts a nice little capper on our conversation. So hopefully everybody at home kind of enjoyed hearing this, kind of got their own sort of catharsis out of it, was able to maybe gather their own thoughts and opinions. And if you have more thoughts and opinions, leave a comment down below. Let us know what you think about all of this. And I would also say that if you want to check these two lovely gentlemen out that are down below me, I put their socials in the description. You should check out their YouTube channels and follow them on social media because they're great dudes. And I will kick it on over to Dylan to close us out with your any thoughts that you have, and then we'll pass it over to Breezy.
No, my thoughts is stay positive, enjoy the game. I've been trying to be more positive too as a human post Dustled on. So find out what about the game you enjoy and stick with it. And if they do a couple things that you don't agree with, try to wait it out a little bit. Be patient. They really haven't done anything yet that's made us think that they don't have your best interest. Like, I guess, yeah, my parting thing is always assume noble intent. I take that in life. I know I'm not going to try to be too soapboxy here, but like, they're making these decisions because they want the game to be good. They don't want the game to be bad. So try to if you approach it with that mindset, then it'll quell maybe some of your frustrations or at least buy you a little bit of time. That's about it.
Nice Quell reference. Love
Mm.
that.
But that's
Yeah, no, I don't have anything. I piggyback on Dylan's thing. Just be positive. I think this is going to be a fun ride. I'm excited to see if everyone's hopes and worries are accurate and it just shakes the meta to its core. I think the community, don't underestimate the community and how quickly we can turn around and have fun with that kind of environment. So stay positive and enjoy the ride. I think it'll be a fun time.
Yep. And if I can leave everyone with anything, I think that LSS cares deeply about the community and about the game that they're producing, and I think that no matter whether or not this long term ends up being where this settles or if they make changes to it, they're doing so from a position of caring about what you as a player and possible new players want and can enjoy most from a game. And sometimes we don't even see that ourselves. So I
Hmm.
think the more I talked about it with y'all, the more I think excited I am to experience this process. I think I'm more positive and more kind of optimistic about it than I was before. And hopefully other people, at least, even if you don't feel that way, hopefully you have even more sort of fleshed out thoughts. But if you enjoyed this sort of thing, do the thing people tell you to do and make numbers go slightly higher. And we'll see you on, I guess, the next one as we hit the old transition button. Goodbye. Everyone wave. It's smile and wave.
Goodbye. Bye-bye
Bye
now.
now. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Are they gone? Did they leave?
Yeah, I think they left.
Is it over?
All right,
They're
now that
all
they're
gone.
all
Thank
gone.
They're all
God.